Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Fergal Armstrong, and welcome to Cracking Addiction. And once again, we've got Jesse Ball with us. Jesse, I thought today we'd follow on from our last talk and think about spirituality as it applies to the idea of recovery. So, what happened to you? You had this moment when you realized enough's enough. To what extent was that a spiritual awakening?
Mm. It's a big question. I find even that word spiritual or spirituality can mean so many different things to other people. But for me, what that meant was connecting with the most pure and deepest aspect of myself. In addiction, I knew I was disconnected from that and it was quite painful. And in recovery, to put it simply, I've come closer with that spiritual aspect, that spiritual side. And for me, essentially, it's my true self.
There's a lot to unpack out of that. So, first of all, let's talk about this disconnection and then we'll move on to your authentic self because I don't think we've explored that enough. But Johann Hari, he who wrote, I think he wrote The Scream, didn't he? He wrote the story of addiction. He wrote a subsequent book in which he described the underlying causes of depression. And he identified 7 social causes of depression, which were all about disconnection from childhood, disconnection from values, identity, work ethic, hope, nature. I can't remember the other ones, but his basic thesis was that disconnection was the root cause of a significant amount of suffering. And yet you say the same thing when we're talking about a journey into substance use. And you're also saying that a reconnection is absolutely crucial to recovery. I mean, I think there's a lot in there.
Yeah, absolutely. I
Yeah.
think to elaborate on that disconnection as well, like for me, like I mentioned, disconnected from myself, but to put that in another way, I was disconnected from my goals, disconnected from the person I wanted to become. I'd believe one thing, but I'd do another. I'd want to be behaving a certain way, but I'd be doing the opposite. I had all these hopes and dreams and aspirations growing up, but once I became addicted to drugs, they took me down another path. So there was this disconnect between the person I wanted to be or could be and the person that I currently was. So that's one aspect which I just thought of, which made sense to me.
Yeah. And you talk about your authentic self. How do you know what your authentic self is?
Yeah, it's a great question.
I
For
mean,
me,
we use words,
yeah,
don't we? What does that actually mean?
yeah, it's exactly right. It's a good question because it gets thrown around so much in recovery. Just be the authentic you, just be yourself. But like, what does that mean, and how do you get there?
Because let me tell you something about my authentic self. Right, my mother, God rest her soul, she's passed on now. Right, my mother gave me some advice before my first ever job interview. Right, and she said her last words were before I went into the interview, "Just be yourself, Fergal." I tell you what, that was the worst piece of advice I ever got. Because my authentic self did not get that job, nor would it get any job. Because I'll be honest with you, I have a completely inappropriate situational sense of humor, and I don't respect authority. So who in their right minds is going to employ a 25-year-old pimply youth who doesn't respect their authority? But at least he's being true to his authentic self.
Yeah, I get it. I think job
Yeah.
interviews, we kind of need that persona, right?
You do. So, I always, I mean, I remember my mother with fondness and love, but just be yourself. That did not work for me. So I digress. How do you connect with your true self?
Hmm. So what I just thought of is a way of answering this. My sponsor in recovery, his sponsor, who unfortunately isn't around anymore, or it's someone I'm pretty sure was his sponsor, but essentially this guy would run workshops, like spiritual workshops on recovery and the steps and things to do with recovery. And one of the recordings I listened to of this very wise man was talking about the persona and why we have a persona to go through life.
Right.
Job interviews is one of those reasons we need a persona. And essentially, he
Yeah.
spoke about the persona as this mask we use to convince the world that we're capable. Like this can-do attitude. I'm capable. I'm competent. But if anyone
Yeah.
saw who I truly was on the inside, then like maybe they wouldn't like me. And this is something that happens a lot for people in addiction. You might hear low self-esteem, high ego, and it's kind of this incongruency between what people are showing and how they feel inside. So for me, being authentic in recovery is that being congruent, like them being the same thing. How I present on the outside is who I am on the inside.
So a matching of your external and internal.
Mm.
Yeah, that's what you're saying. That's what authenticity is.
Which it can take a bit of
Uh,
work to get there. I think it starts with
yeah, it does.
feeling emotions, leaning into what is real for me at the time, and it
Yeah.
takes practice. But it's
Yeah.
essentially, well, what I'm getting at here, sorry to interrupt you, but just to finish my point, what I'm getting at is that persona I talked about. If I let people in and actually see me for who I truly was, and they accepted me, which is what I found in recovery, like that was really important that people could see me for who I was and accept me, then I had the confidence to keep being authentic. Mm.
So again, there's a lot to unpack there. So your authentic self is all about how you relate to the world, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
So what you're saying is authenticity for you is making sure that your external persona matches your internal identity for the sake of how you relate to others, right? And you said previously that substance use made you feel warm and accepted and loved and surrounded by joy and peace, right? And one of the things about recovery is to learn that same feeling of acceptance and love is possible without drugs in the right social context. Again, we're getting this theme of being accepted and loved by other people
Mm.
and allowing other people in to see your hurt and suffering and pain. Is that what I'm picking out here?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. And yeah, I'd have to agree.
Yeah. But that's very, very hard to do, isn't it? It's very hard to show people, oh, look, I'm feeling insecure. I'm feeling that I don't fit in. I've got imposter syndrome. I can't do what I'm supposed to do. I need help. You know, that's very hard to do, isn't it? Isn't there this thing called fake it till you make it? I mean,
It's true. And I think a lot of
yeah,
people, and I was definitely one of these people, I use drugs to kind of keep people from seeing the real me, to hide myself, to protect myself, because
yeah,
I was under this illusion of this idea that if people actually saw me for who I truly was, they wouldn't accept me. I think that's a
yeah,
big part of the healing process, allowing people to see you for who you truly are. And the,
right.
the way I was able to do that was through finding people I trusted and who had been through similar experiences to myself. Like a part of the program at the rehab I went to was you get up and you read out your life story in front of 30 essentially strangers. You've only known these people for a couple of weeks, but you write out all your deepest, darkest secrets and then share them with people. And I think I mentioned that in a previous episode, but the sheer relief I got just from doing that in itself was incredible.
So the admission of failure and hurt and pain is of benefit. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's the conduit to connection with others.
Yeah, because now they've seen you for who you are. They've seen the authentic self, and I don't
Right.
believe we can connect with others from a place other than the authentic self, like a
Yeah.
genuine connection. And I find what really sustains my happiness and excites me and gets me out of bed in the morning today in recovery is being able to authentically connect with people. So I let people in. I let them see me. I be vulnerable with them. I'll laugh loud. I won't hold back. I'll just be myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a really
Yeah.
nice feeling.
But that takes a lot of courage and a lot of practice and a lot of where did the self-loathing and the fear go? You know, because yes, you're in recovery and we want to bottle that, but
Yeah.
it's there's also this reversal of sweeping away or dealing with at least this all the negative emotions. Where do all that go?
Like, where does that fear and self-loathing go? Like when it comes up, is that
Yeah,
what you mean?
because wait, you by your own admission, you've been filled with fear and self-loathing, right?
Yeah.
And now that you're in recovery, you're full of optimism, hope, and strength. So, where did all the fear and loathing go? Did it go to Las Vegas?
I think I was able to release a lot of it through my recovery process. It can
Yeah.
still creep back in, but it doesn't have the strength like it used to. It's like I released most of my baggage within those first few years of
Right.
recovery through.
So, how do you do that then? Because this is a new concept. Not only have you got to let the world in and let the world see you as the vulnerable self, you've also got to release baggage, which is a new concept to this discussion, isn't it?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, releasing old ideas, old narratives, identifying what serves us well and what doesn't serve us well, and
Yeah.
letting go of the things that don't serve us well.
Like what? What didn't serve you well? And what was your narrative at the time?
So through doing the 12 steps, in step 4, you go through sort of your actions, your behaviors, your fears, resentments, and through that process, I could start to see this real pattern, this real common denominator, what was going on. And what was happening was I was constantly making myself the victim throughout my life circumstances.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
obviously, once I started using drugs, my life got worse. I'd get into trouble with friends, police, etc. But I would always continue to make myself the victim no matter what happened. And then I'd continue to use drugs because of it.
Mm.
And I was able to see that as a pattern and then discuss it with my sponsor at the time, who was a really loving, kind man. And he was able to help, with help of him and through writing down these patterns, I was able to get a different perspective of it. And I realized with that new perspective that this doesn't serve me. This doesn't serve anyone. It's just baggage. And from there, I could
Yeah.
start to release some of it.
Now that's a very interesting concept that you've brought up. This idea of acknowledging that you were playing the victim. Because there's a concept in psychology about the locus of control, and some people have an internal locus of control whereby they feel that they are the masters of their own destiny, and that they can control life, and the quality of their life is dependent on the quality of their choices, right? And there are those with an external locus of control where they think that they are buffeted by the winds of adversity and there's nothing they can do to change their life's outcomes. And stuff happens to them. They're the victims. And people with external loci of control, they don't do as well. They don't embrace life. They don't develop. They don't grow. And they wallow. They wallow in self sympathy. And I suppose there's a very easy jump from wallowing in victimhood and then trying to escape that pain by any means, and then that leads you down the garden path to using a substance. So, really, what I'm also hearing is that there's a change in the locus of control in your recovery, whereby you moved from external to internal, and you took responsibility for yourself, basically.
I did, and it was an incredibly rewarding process to do that as well. I think as a young man, it's something I speak quite a lot about with other people. I didn't realize how much pain I was causing myself from my inability to take responsibility for things. And I thought
Yeah,
escaping my life through drugs and my pain was the answer. But once I started to take that initial responsibility for myself and that
mm,
no one was going to come and save me, it had always been my job to save myself. I
yeah.
really started to gain some confidence, and that process in itself has developed today. Like this idea of taking responsibility is very satisfying.
But how did you come to that realization?
That I had to take responsibility for myself.
Yeah,
Another good question. I think my time in rehab, I could see the reality of addiction right up in front of my face. There were people in there a lot older than I was who were absolutely destroyed, worse than I was by addiction. Like it would have been where I would have ended up in 20, 30 years. And I think just seeing the reality of where addiction can take you really woke me up to this realization that I'm going to die or something just as bad if I don't get this under wraps and if I don't take control of my life.
Right.
So, yeah, if that makes sense.
So you were confronted with your rock bottom.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely say that.
Yeah. So, I mean, as a therapist, I would love to know how to get patients to confront their rock bottom sooner rather than later. Because one thing I've learned is that everyone's rock bottom is different, and my idea of a rock bottom is way out compared to the rock bottom that some people go through before they actually turn, before they actually make a change in their life.
Mm.
Um, yeah, it's it's challenging, and I suppose really the story that you've given us is a story of hope, whereby you take responsibility yourself after you've seen your rock bottom, and you start making decisions that are more appropriate for you. So, can you give us an example of some of the decisions you were making early on, and compare those to the decisions you make these days?
When you say decisions I made early on, like in early recovery, or
Yeah, early recovery. Like, what's it like being in early recovery? Like, is it you decide to get up in the morning rather than stay in bed? Is it as basic as that, or talk us through the journey?
I've got to think back a bit now, but I remember that an initial decision to take responsibility for my personal recovery was huge.
Yeah.
I quit my job. I went on Centrelink, which I'd never been on Centrelink before. And that was purely to make my recovery my full-time job.
Why did you quit your job? To make your recovery your full time job? But what job did you do before?
I was working in construction. I'd actually just got a new job before I entered rehab, which I reluctantly wanted to leave because I was earning quite good money, and money had always sort of been something I didn't have a lot of because of my addiction. But I had this new job, I was getting paid well for it, and I wanted to go back so I could keep earning money. But through therapy and support of the community I was in at rehab, they helped me see that if I relapse, then it doesn't matter how much money I earn because I've got evidence. I'm just going to blow it all on drugs. So recovery had to become my number one priority.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this wasn't something that sort of came naturally to me. I had resistance. I probably don't talk about this enough. I had resistance the whole process, like there wasn't anything I was like, yeah, this is great. I had resistance the whole way. I wanted to go back to work. I didn't want to make recovery my full time job. But once I started to see the benefits like straight
So
away.
how did you overcome that resistance initially? Because I see a lot of patients who just don't accept that. Oh, I can go out, I can work, I can have a life and be in recovery. That's you know,
Again, I think I was just confronted with the seriousness of it.
yeah,
I had some, it's hard to, I guess, explain sometimes, but I had some sort of awakening where I could see clearly. And I could see that this disease was trying to kill me, and if I don't prioritize it, I'm going to die. And it was that simple.
it was that simple.
So again,
Yeah,
things didn't come. I wouldn't say they came easily, but from like when, like if someone tells you you've got a disease and you're going to die, say it was like I don't know, heart failure or something else, you're gonna the only appropriate response is, well, what the hell do I have to do to fix it? You wouldn't be like, oh, well, I've actually got this job and the boss needs me 4 times a week, so maybe I'll come back here next Wednesday. No, like you'd make it your full time job if something was trying to kill you. I think that really sinked in for me, that idea.
right. But here's the thing: not everyone would. And I think this is an example of a decision that you've made from an internal locus of control. Because if you really are in the victim mindset and you get told you're going to die, well, you say, well, there's nothing I can do to help myself. I'm
Mm,
just going to keep using drugs to escape the inevitable pain. Whereas you thought, oh dear, I've got to do something about it. And so that ties into this concept of being responsible for yourself.
yeah, it's crazy to think about. I really feel like there was another force at play when I reflect on it. Like it was, I think a few things just aligned, and I was able to take responsibility. I know you mentioned that, so I'll
Yeah,
talk about the responsibility a little bit more. It started off with
yeah,
taking responsibility for what I was put my recovery first, not rush back to work, attend regular meetings, day programs, therapy, whatever I had to do to stay clean, but then start taking responsibility for my health, for just looking after myself, really. Like the recovery being a full-time job, like it is a full-time job. It involves a lot. I think from there, like my confidence grew. I started to take responsibility for my actions and my behaviors. And so I started to notice how my actions and behaviors hurt other people. And for that first year, I really just looked after myself and focused on me. And now, almost 4 years into recovery, I can start to be responsible for all sorts of things, whether it's at work, outside of work. I do some volunteering, some running, coaching. Other people expect me to show up and to be accountable today. And I suppose that's what responsibility looks like for me today. I also feel responsible for just being the best person I can be for the people I meet in the future as well.
Jesse, it's been a pleasure to talk to you today. I really hope we can talk again very soon, but for now, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
That's all for today, folks. My name is Dr. Fergal Armstrong, and this has been Cracking Addiction.